This is a story of a relationship that started with passion, attraction, and intense emotions, but slowly turned into obsession, jealousy, and control. A story where love became dangerous, where trust was replaced with manipulation, and where one man would lose his life in a way so brutal that it shocked an entire nation. And in this story, you will see how a toxic relationship spiraled completely out of control. It was June 4th, 2008, in Mesa, Arizona, a quiet suburban area where the day had begun like any other, the sun rising over calm neighborhoods, people heading to work, life moving forward as usual. But inside one home, something horrific had already taken place, something that would soon turn into one of the most talked about criminal cases in modern history. Inside that house lived Travis Alexander, a 30-year-old motivational speaker and businessman, known for his outgoing personality, his ambition, and his strong social circle. But on that day, no one could reach him. Calls went unanswered, messages ignored, and for someone so active, so connected, this silence was unusual. Days passed, and concern began to grow among his friends. Something didn't feel right, and eventually they decided to check on him, arriving at his home, hoping everything was fine, hoping there was a simple explanation. But what they discovered inside was beyond anything they could have imagined. Travis Alexander was found dead in his bathroom, and the scene was horrifying, far more violent than a typical crime. It was clear that this was not an accident, not a simple act, but something fueled by extreme rage, something deeply personal. The entire house became a crime scene, investigators moving carefully, documenting every detail, every piece of evidence, trying to understand what had happened, trying to piece together the final moments of his life. And as they began their investigation, one name quickly came into focus: Jodi Arias. She was not a stranger, not someone unknown, but someone who had been deeply involved in Travis's life, someone he had been in a complicated and intense relationship with, a relationship filled with ups and downs, breakups and reconciliations, passion and conflict. At first, Jodi presented herself as cooperative, calm, even unaware of what had happened. She claimed she hadn't seen Travis, that she didn't know anything about his death, and for a moment, it seemed like she might just be another person being questioned. But the evidence told a different story. Investigators uncovered digital clues, phone records, and most importantly, a camera found the crime scene, a camera that would change everything. Inside that camera were photos, images that documented moments leading up to the crime, showing Travis alive, unaware of what was about to happen. And then, something even more disturbing. The timeline captured in those images pointed directly to Jodi Arias being there, inside the house, at the exact time of the murder. As pressure built, her story began to change. First, she denied being there at all. Then, she claimed that two intruders had broken in and attacked them. And later, she shifted again, now saying that she had acted in self-defense. Each version different, each version raising more questions than answers. The investigation revealed a relationship that was far from normal, filled with emotional intensity, jealousy, and control. Messages, emails, and recordings showed a connection that was unstable, unpredictable, and at times, deeply toxic. Friends of Travis described concerns, moments where they felt something wasn't right, times when the relationship seemed unhealthy, but no one could have predicted how it would end. As the case moved forward, it gained massive media attention, drawing interest from across the country. People were captivated by the details, by the mystery, by the shocking nature of the crime. The trial became one of the most closely followed in recent history. Inside the courtroom, every detail was examined, every piece of evidence presented, every claim challenged. Jodi Arias took the stand, speaking for hours, sharing a version of events, describing her relationship with Travis, painting a picture of fear, claiming that she had acted to protect herself. But prosecutors presented a very different narrative. They argued that this was not self-defense, but a calculated act driven by jealousy, rejection, and obsession, pointing to the extent of the violence, the evidence of planning, and the attempts to cover up what had happened. The jury listened carefully, weighing both sides, trying to make sense of a case filled with emotion, contradiction, and disturbing details. Outside the courtroom, the public followed every development, debates spreading across media, discussions about relationships, control, and the warning signs that are often ignored. As the trial continued, the truth became harder to ignore. The evidence was overwhelming. the changing stories, the physical evidence, the timeline, everything pointed in one direction. In the end, the jury reached a verdict. Jodi Arias was found guilty of first-degree murder. The sentencing phase followed, bringing even more tension, even more emotion, as both sides presented arguments about what the punishment should be. Eventually, she was sentenced to life in prison without the possibility of parole. But even with a verdict, the case left behind many questions, many discussions, many lessons. It became a story not just about a crime, but about the complexities of relationships, about how emotions can escalate, about how warning signs can be missed or ignored. Because this wasn't a random act. This was a relationship that slowly unraveled, a connection that became toxic, a situation where boundaries were crossed again and again, until it reached a point of no return. Travis Alexander lost his life in a way no one deserves, and Jodi Arias lost her freedom forever. But for those who followed the case, for those who looked deeper into the story, it became something more, a reminder that not all danger comes from strangers. Sometimes it comes from someone you trust, someone you let into your life, someone you believe you understand. And that is what makes the story so disturbing, because it didn't begin with violence. It began with attraction, with connection, with what seemed like love. And in the end, it turned into something deadly,